If you've been on Twitter.com at any point over the past 7 years, you're probably owed a lot of emotional damages. As a creator, I use it to connect with my audience, but I've gotta say, consuming content of any sort through Twitter has gotta be one of the top 5 worst experiences a human can have. Right behind playing a new Call of Duty. No amount of bleaching your eyes can save you from the absolute codswallop of takes you'll see on that site. Regardless of what people say though, 2025 has been an absolutely wild year for new games. Partly because so many amazing games have released, like Expedition 33 and Silksong, but also because so many live service games had their greatest updates yet, like Wuthering Waves 2.x, which absolutely crushed expectations. But alongside the greater game releases, there have also been some more controversial releases. I'm not going to cover everything since I mostly do brain rot on this channel, but needless to say, people have had problems with seemingly every patch of every live service gacha, the new release of Star Resonance and Tower of Fantasy's Warp Server, and of course, the subject of this video, Duet Night Abyss.
And after thousands of hours in Warframe and now 200 hours in Duet Night Abyss,
I want to share an honest perspective on the game, positives and negatives. And full transparency, I love Duet Night Abyss. It's probably my favorite anime game release of 2025. It's been an absolute blast to play, but it's definitely not perfect, and in this video, I'm going to try and communicate what I think has happened. And I say try because despite me outlining everything in almost every video I make like this, there's always people who comment things that make me think I spoke Braille for the entire video. So strap on for a more serious video. With that said, my name is Braxophone, but you can call me Brax, and let's talk about Duet Night Abyss right after I read you this ad. This video is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. Raid is having another major crossover, and this one is huge. This IP is recognized all over the globe, and I would even go as far as to say culturally iconic, but I can't tell you what it is yet because embargoes and all that. But what I can tell you is that it will feature new exclusive champions and great limited time rewards. What I can also tell you is that Raid is a champion-based turn-based RPG available on PC and mobile that uses all sorts of fantasy to create a fun and intriguing experience. Raid has been around for years, and it stands out because of how refined and rewarding the gameplay feels. That well, I'm sure you've seen a couple of ads at least. Years worth of challenging bosses, stories, and overall content. There are tons of game modes to enjoy, including PvE and multiple types of PvP, and all of this is done while enjoying high-quality visuals depicting fantasy settings and characters. With over 900 champions to collect and battle with, you'll have a very diverse range of options, and now is a great time to start. Not only because of the mystery collaboration, but also because you can get Ultimate Death Knight for free. He's a very powerful unit that can take all of the hits for your team, heal himself, shield your whole squad, and debuff enemies. He's great in both PvE and PvP, and you can get him right now by downloading Raid through my link or QR code and by using promo code UDKING. There's also 5 other champions to choose from if you prefer them to Ultimate Death Knight, like Green Warden Roar, Alice the Wanderer, Tehunarak, Sun Wukong Monkey King, and Tholen Foulbeard. On top of that, you can get Epic Fayne, and after reaching level 15, Epic Tayrel. Click on the link in the description to download right now and see what all the hype's about. Duet Night Abyss is one of the first games to announce that they are removing their game's gacha, which was well received by almost everybody, but some community figures early on expressed their skepticism about whether or not the game would be good. As you may know, removing the gacha from a game doesn't instantly make it good, especially if the systems that were built around the gacha system aren't reworked. This includes anything that's monetized by the company based on building the characters, like a stamina system, or anything that gives you a premium currency such as chests, FOMO events, endgame modes, and more. Well, luckily, Duet Night Abyss actually has done a fairly good job of that in my personal opinion. Instead of just giving everything for free, you still have to play the game to earn the characters. All characters and weapons are obtained through collecting what's called secret letters. They're gained over time via enemy drops, login rewards, and more. Overall, they're not very hard to get. And in my opinion, this system is actually friendlier than Warframe's relic system, since the relics in Warframe have far more randomness to the drops you actually get and to the relics that you actually get, and it can take longer to farm something in Warframe than Duet Night Abyss. In Duet Night Abyss, once you have the secret letter clues, you can choose something to target that you want to farm for. The stages in Duet Night Abyss are also very easy and get easier the more built your characters are. They're also co-opable, which means infinite grindable fun before, during, and after you hit the club. However, despite everything in Duet Night Abyss being collectible and players being satisfied with the time spent to unlock something, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There are quite a few things for Duet Night Abyss to improve on for the player experience, and one of the more controversial ones is combat, which in my personal opinion, as a Warframe veteran, I feel like it's actually fine, but if we look at the greater gaming industry, it's just fine. When compared with Warframe, a conceptually similar game, DNA falls short. Warframe has 4 core frame abilities, and even more from other systems, while Duet Night Abyss only has 2 core abilities per character, plus 1 from Genimon. This fact probably stems from the game being made for mobile, to try and keep things simple. But it really hurts the game on a fundamental level, because it takes away from the identity and replayability of every single character. Not to mention, it copied many character kits straight out of Warframe, but did them a little bit worse. Oh, you like Valkyr? Try Fantasio. Oh, you like Mesa? Well, they didn't just take Mesa's kit, they also took her assets. You're a Hydroid main? Well, maybe, don't play that one in this game actually. If we compare the movement in this game to Warframe, it feels worse as well. And I don't think anyone was contesting that. But between copies of Warframe characters, the mobile UI, and the Genimon system, it's really hard to pinpoint what the target audience of this game actually is. And one of the biggest issues Duet Night Abyss has is exactly that. Who even is its competitor? And who is its target audience? It looked like it was trying to compete in the anime mobile space with Genshin, Wuthering Waves, Enfield, and more. But if you ask a gacha player if they like Duet Night Abyss, a lot of them are gonna say no, because a lot of people play gacha games for the convenience of spending as little time on a game as possible, something that I don't think I'll personally ever understand, but I respect the commitment. Duet Night Abyss requires a lot of time doing the same missions over and over, using the same characters over and over with very little variation. The combat is not complex like Wuwa and does not have elemental reactions like Genshin. Instead of fighting 1 to 3 enemies, in Duet Night Abyss, you fight hundreds, so mechanics like those don't really work as well. Trying to compare Duet Night Abyss combat to Wuwa and ZZZ is like comparing a wet napkin to a hydrogen baby. The puzzles in DNA are often simple and the combat is floaty. I mean, you can literally fly through the air by shooting your gun. I've come to learn in my time covering the game that it's the complete opposite of what many gacha players want out of a game, and for that reason, my audience in particular doesn't really vibe with it, which is fine because if I really cared about pleasing my audience, I'd probably still be making like Genshin Impact videos or something. Ultimately, Duet Night Abyss is about the characters, just like gacha games, but the characters aren't as interesting to play with due to their lack of abilities and the lack of complexity of combat. But personally, I think that's actually okay, because whether the developers knew it or not, the actual audience for Duet Night Abyss is Warframe and Western MMO-like players. A lot of people are worried about Duet Night Abyss taking inspiration from Warframe, but remember, competition is always good for the consumer because it means both sides have to work harder to be better than the other. People keep starting wars over which games are better all the time, and I'm just over here like, wow, 2 cakes. But DNA's developmental identity crisis has definitely hurt it quite a bit.
The game was initially teased for the first time to be an anime mobile game with Souls-like and Code Vein vibes. And then when the beta actually released, it shared a lot of similarities to Genshin Impact with the characters' abilities, designs, the world, and the gameplay loop.
Another beta later, and they've added this system called Genimon with a catch gauge that looks exactly like Palworld. When it was first being developed, Duet Night Abyss's team didn't know what the game was actually supposed to be, which is why it's had its hand in so many cookie jars. But since all of the time given to it was split so many ways, Duet Night Abyss does a lot of things subpar compared to the other games. Because they pivoted so many times from so many different ideas, they weren't able to really min-max on the 1 concept or 2 concepts that they wanted to do exceptionally well. Another way to put it is this: if you spend a month trying to learn 10 instruments rather than just 1, you may come out a more versatile player, and you might even be pretty decent at all 10 of the instruments, but you could never be as good as the player who spent the whole month focusing all of that time and effort into the 1 instrument. And who's gonna get the job at the end of the day? It's gonna be the guy who sounds better on the 1 spot they need filled. The person who learns 10 instruments is probably a good musician, but why would someone choose something that's just good over something great? Duet Night Abyss's systems were not exceptionally well executed from launch. Don't get me wrong, the game is very fun, and in my opinion, it's quite good, but many of its core gameplay systems still need a little bit of refinement. For example, the die system in Duet Night Abyss is a great concept that is executed in an unfriendly way for players. Essentially, anytime you want to dye a skin, you need to pull on the gacha to get a currency that allows you to buy the colored dyes, or you can just spend money buying them in the shop, but each dye is one-time use. If you look at Warframe's system, you can permanently purchase color palettes, but the actual dyeing costs nothing. You can change your colors whenever you want. If we look at the ranged weapon system in Duet Night Abyss, there's no aim down sights option, only shoot. Shooting and aiming down sights are one and the same in the game, and that lack of a separate option was likely a compromise that was made for mobile, but makes the game feel a bit worse to play. If we look at multiplayer in the overworld, it's almost exclusively reserved to this one specific spot in town. If you're going to allow other players to be seen, you shouldn't limit it to this small zone with no obvious boundaries. The world would be far more alive if you could see players everywhere. I thought that was kind of the point of like an open world zone. You also can't really do much with other players in this mode yet, so it feels half-baked even though it's a great concept. If we look at the microtransaction shop, I'm going to be totally honest. There's not enough to buy, which sounds crazy, right? But really, if we want to customize our characters, it'll take a lot more than a Christmas virgin killer. A lot of players are willing to spend money on things other than the gacha, and they need other options. I also wouldn't have a problem with cool cosmetics being earnable in game too, but I've resigned myself to that not being a thing in most free-to-play games. In the midst of all of these downsides of the game, I do think that the MTX shop's existence is fine though. The game is completely free to play, and though you can buy characters and weapons to pay to win, it's a completely solo experience with co-op options. There's no weirdos gatekeeping content against lower level players and non-spenders because everything can be earned, and even if somebody spends $1,000 to get everything in the game, so what? It doesn't affect you at all. If this were an MMO like Tower of Fantasy or Star Resonance, it'd be problematic, but it's not. And what's the benefit of spending? You don't have to play the game? Okay, then just don't play the game. Anyways, that was a bit of a tangent, but for some reason MMO players need to be explained to why pay-for-power MTX shops are fine in single-player games, but not the multiplayer ones. As for farming missions, the missions all drop different materials and barely ever cross over each other. Some materials like Lunocoins are required far too much to be locked behind a defense mission and one other content that people only do like 3 times a week. Make them drop sparingly from other missions too, make it a passive gain, or make it drop from specific enemies. I think this system is a result of them switching from the gacha model, and if they had more time, I really feel like this would have been fleshed out more to not have specific drops be so exclusive to each individual mission. If we look at the amount of content in the game, there's a lot, but there's not a lot of challenging content. The content that you can play is more or less like Warframes, but with fewer tile sets, and the missions are faster on average, at least in my experience. There's an endgame floor climb and a roguelike, so 2 endgame modes, but both of them are exceptionally easy, with the roguelike's difficulty just being really low, even with full multipliers, and the floor climb just being DPS checks without real mechanics. A lot of people don't want to give MTash credit, but he was right. Enemies in this game barely do any damage to you, and they don't do a ton of damage to you in Warframe either for comparison's sake, at least in most missions, but I could go AFK in most missions in Duet Night Abyss for minutes at a time and not go down, which is crazy to me. Now, in gacha games, there's a pressure to make endgame fights not have mechanics that punish you for poor execution, because if they do that, then people won't have an incentive to spend. The higher skill expression takes you, the less money people will spend to skip skill expression. But since this game isn't a gacha, it has the opportunity to add bosses with mechanics that are actually punishing to the point of a wipe, because the game is all about your investment and skill, and not about the money you spend. More content in general would be great, and more challenging content like co-op and single-player raid bosses with raid mechanics would really elevate this game to be far more than it currently is. Whew. So at this point in the video, you may have noticed a theme, but if I haven't made it clear enough yet, this is it. Duet Night Abyss feels as though it released in an unfinished state. It didn't have enough time to carve its own identity as a unique game, and a lot of its systems are functional and good, but could be far better if they had taken more time. And let's be honest, in 2025, if a game releases that's not better in one aspect than every other game on the market, it's seen as complete garbage. There is very little nuance to people's opinions online. The game is either exceptionally good or it is dog shit, and there is no in between. And the fact that it feels unfinished, coupled with being a mobile-focused game, definitely held it back a lot. And even that wasn't well optimized. The mobile version had so many issues. In my opinion, if you're a game developer, it is really important to make the game at its maximum potential. You should never bring a game's development down to the mobile level. You should aim to bring mobile's development up to the other platforms. That's what allows a game the greatest room to grow, and I can't help but wonder if Duet Night Abyss should have been a console and PC release instead of a mobile release. I'm sorry, mobile players, that's just kind of how I feel. But that's a bit of a tangent though. After seeing the Duet Night Abyss version 1.1 teaser, I really think that 1.1 was meant to be the real release of the game, but they had to push the game out sooner for some reason. I mean, have you seen what's been cooking? It looks like an entire graphical overhaul and a whole new region with 5 new characters. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the version they wanted to release, but they just couldn't get it done in time. But I actually have a lot of faith in Duet Night Abyss for that exact reason. There's more issues than I listed in this video, but all of the ones that I listed are fixable with development time, even though many of those have been strongly inspired by other games, if I can even use the word inspired here. Duet Night Abyss is very clearly inspired by a ton of other games, but that's not always a bad thing. Sometimes you need a blueprint to make the next big thing. I mean, look at Genshin Impact. That game was largely inspired by Breath of the Wild and also took cutscene and ability inspiration from other games and media. But despite that, with time, it very much developed its own unique identity to the point where it's not even comparable to Breath of the Wild outside of the run around to open chest part. Many games out of China do blatantly rip off of other games, but if the games survive, they usually can carve out their own identity. The bones of Duet Night Abyss are very solid. They just need more time to realize their full potential. Much like Cyberpunk 2077 and Wuthering Waves, which many people swore were terrible games until some systems were fixed and optimizations were made. Most MMO releases have been like this too, where the game lacks content or has unpolished systems, and over time they get better. Hell, FF14 had an entire remake of the game before it became what people knew and loved. And though I've been super critical of Duet Night Abyss in this video, there are some things that it does exceptionally well, though some folks online would rather die than admit it. The story of Duet Night Abyss, though it's slow at the start, is very compelling. Act 2 and Act 3 in particular are done incredibly well, with Act 2 reminding me of a lot of different Final Fantasy stories. Act 3 is its own self-contained opera tragedy, and it's got some amazing twists and turns, with a closing number that I put on my YouTube music playlist right away. Oh, and the music in Duet Night Abyss is phenomenal. It's a genuine work of art. You can tell that a lot of heart and soul was put into the soundtrack for this game, and as a musician, it gives me a ton of faith in Pan Studio. After all, any game studio that cares enough to curate the music to this level, to the point where even people who hate the game agree it's outstanding, to the point where even classically trained musicians are obsessed with it, has to care about making an amazing game. And looking at social media, the devs are quick to respond about bugs, patches, and improving the game. A lot of folks like to compare the Duet Night Abyss of today to the Warframe of today, and it's just not a fair comparison. I think that we should hold new games to higher standards than older games, don't get me wrong, but Warframe has had over 10 years of live service development to add new content, polish the game, and make it the great version it is today. I was there at Warframe's launch. The game was hollow and it crashed every 30 seconds. Duet Night Abyss feels unfinished too, but should the developers continue to care about the game, I can see Duet Night Abyss improving massively over time, just like Warframe did, just like Wuthering Waves did, and just like so many other games that had rough launches did, as long as the studios cared about the game being good. Also, for all the criticisms I've had in this video, it's not like the game is even bad. It's actually quite good. It's a completely free-to-play game that allows you to collect and build characters like a gacha while having the gameplay loop of a more Western game release. It allows players to play how they want on their own time, and in that way, it's far more respectful of players than many newer released games. It's one of the few games I can log on to nowadays and not instantly feel some sort of stress or FOMO on. It's a game that gives you the delayed gratification of spending the time to earn what you want, and then use what you've earned to conquer the game and its other systems, or even flex in social zones, once they expand that bit. I've played for hundreds of hours now, and I've been enjoying the grind, progression, characters, combat, music, and story. Everyone I know that's played Warframe has actually loved Duet Night Abyss, despite the movement and gunplay not feeling as good as Warframe's, because the game is just pretty dang good. But why settle for good when games can be great? Hopefully Duet Night Abyss improves over the next few patches, because I think that this game could really shake up the anime gaming space if they just focus on finding their own identity, maximizing it, and paving their own path to this game's greatness. So long as they stay focused on creating the best game that they possibly can, and so long as they find themselves, this game has the potential to be incredible down the line. Thanks for watching. Download Raid Shadow Legends with my link down below.